Hello and welcome to another episode of NSE FinWiz powered by CNBC TV18. Today we're in Kolkata at the corporate head office of the largest coal company in the world, Coal India. Coal India Limited is a state-owned coal mining corporate and the single largest coal producer in the world. Operating through 81 mining areas, Coal India Limited is an apex body with 7 coal-producing subsidiaries and 1 mine consultancy company spread over 8 provincial states of India. Focusing on our theme for the series, NSE FinWiz visited Coal India Limited in Kolkata to gauge thoughts and notions of young professionals on investments and financial planning.
Investment for me would be something wherein I take some goods or probably some money that is kept aside, and that would have a futuristic approach that in future will be a wealth for me, it will create income for me, it will benefit me.
I do know about some financial products like there are mutual funds and there are insurance products, as well as you can go into maybe real estate as well, and gold is also another option apart from the usual FDs which are there.
Basically the banking sector, this is one of the core areas of any economy. So I would like to ask the experts, as the banks are not doing provisioning for NPAs, non-performing assets much. So I would really like to know, like, what are the likely impacts of NPAs in the banking sector and also on the economy as such.
Well, we're now joined by our 2 very special experts. We have Gajendra Kothari, who's the MD and CEO at Etica Wealth Management, and we have Uday Dhoot, who's the Deputy CEO at International Money Matters. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Uday, first question to you. The very basic rule, how do I start a good financial plan?
You can't just save and say I have no goals, no plan, no idea. I have to look at, okay, what am I saving for? So the first and the foremost important thing is, what are your goals? Putting your goals and writing them down is the most important thing that you can do for your financial plan. So I want to go for my postgraduate 3 years down the line. I will need, say, 2 lakh rupees for that. I want to buy a car 5 years down the line. I need 7 lakh rupees for that. I want to buy a house 6 years, 7 years down the line. I need 20 lakh rupees for that. Putting those goals down, putting a value against those goals, that is the most important step that you can take to make a financial plan. Everything else then works backwards. How much do you need to save? In what asset do you need to save? All of those answers will come once you have that particular item very clearly sorted out.
Okay. Gajendra, now it's obviously important to set your goals, which leads to how you start saving it and then investing it. But you know, very often these are young professionals here, first or second job, and it's very difficult. Sometimes they say that, you know, at the end of the month I don't have anything in my hand to save, to invest. How should they counter that? How should they work around that?
So there is a famous saying by Warren Buffett, you know, he says, don't save what is left after spending, spend what is left after saving, you know. And 99% of us, we do the first step, and that's why we can never become rich, because our earning is limited. The spending, there is a question mark, because we don't know every month how much we are spending, and so there is a question mark on the savings also. If you reverse this equation, let's say you are getting 1 lakh rupees per month as your salary. Second of the month, if you put aside 20,000 rupees for your goals, then 80,000 is left. Just go and spend that amount. You won't feel guilty also, right? But we do the opposite. The moment you can do it, I can guarantee you, you'll all become rich maybe 20 years down the later, because then you're disciplined, you know. So that's very important.
Uday, talking about discipline, now discipline is another attribute that's really important, because you need to discipline your investing plan. But I mean, I've seen this happen a lot when related to equities, which people do a lot. Is suddenly if the market's gone up, they're saying let me put more and more money, and if the markets go down, they say let me not put money. But that's not the right way to look at it, right? What's the correct way? How do you control this behavior?
So we keep saying this behavior as the famous thing, which is basically at times greed drives us, at times fear drives us. As in, and this happened in markets not very back, say 3 years, 4 years back in 2008. I recollect, and there were people standing in lines wanting to open Demat accounts. Why? Because everyone wanted to invest in an IPO and thought they will make money. And what was driving people? It was greed which was driving people, and the same thing happens in the same year. People are standing behind, outside a bank and wanting to withdraw money, saying that this bank won't be there anymore. So this greed and fear, none of these things actually worked. The IPO didn't make money, the bank didn't go down. So now for people, it's a human nature, right? we will get scared by what we see in media, what we see in papers. So how do we kind of move ourselves against that? I think the only way, which I said, and I come back to my first point, is putting what my goals are. When I know that, okay, my goal is short term, and say after 1 year I want to go for a holiday, what are the kind of assets that I will choose? I will choose assets which are not very risky, which can be liquidated in a year's time, and which will give me some sort of a guarantee that I'll get my money, because I need it after 1 year. I'm very, very clear that I want to go for that holiday, so I'll not put that in, say, in equities, in risky assets. Similarly, if I have a 10-year goal, then I'm willing to take risk. It does not matter to me. I know today the most important question is which government will come in the next 3 months, but it does not matter to me, because my goal is 10 years later. I need an investment which will give me protection against inflation. So I'm saying, when you're making your investments, if you can bifurcate and say, okay, this money is long-term money, this money is for my retirement, I have 20 years for this money. In 20 years what is going to happen, frankly nobody knows, but what is short-term? So basically figure out what is your time horizon to invest, and then accordingly choose your asset class.
What is inflation? Everybody reads about it in the paper, you hear it on the news channels, inflation has reached this, inflation has reached that figure, but I'm a retail investor, how is inflation affecting me? Do I need to even pay attention to that number?
You have touched my favorite topic, So inflation, we all know what is inflation. It's basically rise in prices, So rise in milk prices or fuel prices, right? So that's called a normal inflation. You know at what rate this inflation is growing in India? So this is around 9 to 10%. So which means whatever you could buy last year at 100 rupees, today you have to pay 110 rupees to buy the same item. Okay. Now can we do anything about this inflation? Or can we stop consuming these items because it's growing? No, we can't. But what is my biggest worry? And particularly most of the individuals here in this show are young people. Okay. My biggest worry is something called lifestyle inflation, which is our own created. And I'll give you a classic example. My brother, 25, he was very comfortable wearing Titan Fast Track watches. What does Titan Fast Track watch cost? 1500 rupees. The day he got engaged, his fiancée gave him a 7500 rupees Tommy Hilfiger watch. So the guy who has always been used to 1500 rupees watch now is wearing 7500 Tommy Hilfiger watch. Can he ever come back to a 1500 rupees watch in his life? No. The problem doesn't stop there. Since he got a gift from his fiancée, he has to give a return gift also to her. Right? Can that return gift be less than 7,500? No. So he ended up giving a 9,000 rupees designer bag to her. Just imagine these guys at 25 age are now used to such thing. It's very difficult. And that is what is worrying me. So mobile, we all today use smartphones. 5 years back there was nothing called smartphones. It all cost 30,000, 40,000 rupees. But we all have today. It has become a necessity. That's called lifestyle inflation. And right from head to toe, we all want to be branded, absolutely. That's called inflation. And there is no cure for that. Yeah. There's no investment which can match lifestyle inflation,
Okay, so then Uday, the $1 million question. How do I, if there's no way to, how do I somehow, if I can't beat this lifestyle inflation, how do I match it, or what can I do?
How do I keep my wife, fiancé, girlfriend happy and still be able to beat inflation is the question, right? So that's a difficult one. How do you protect yourself against inflation? So basically inflation is eating onto your wealth in some manner or form. So let's say if some of you are saving, how do some people save? Some people save saying that there's money lying in my bank account. How much is it earning in my bank account? 4%. On that I have to pay tax at 30%. So after tax I get 2.8%. So if I kept 100 rupees in my bank account, after 1 year it became 103 rupees. Inflation is at 10%. So I am actually minus 7 rupees, right? So that is where inflation is. So you need investments in assets that actually beat inflation. Now what are those assets that are there? We'll talk about both financial and physical assets. Some people say real estate is a very good investment and which beats inflation over longer periods of time. Yes, real estate is possibly a good investment, but it's a fairly bulky investment. It's not an investment for people who are just starting their careers, because you can't put 2,000, 3,000 rupees in real estate. Right? The other asset that beats inflation is equities. Again, over longer periods of time, not over every 3 months, 6 months. So you can look at equities, you can look at real estate possibly after a point in time. Now, recently, government has started introducing a new type of bond which is called inflation-linked bonds. These are basically like fixed deposit, but there the return is secured from inflation. So the government says that you can buy these bonds, you will get whatever is inflation plus 1.5%. 5%. That's for the CPI bonds that have been there. There are some issues in terms of taxation, but possibly our feeling is that they will become a very important product for any retail investor who wants to beat inflation. So these are the products that one can kind of look at.
You're watching NSE FinViz powered by CNBC TV 18. It's time for a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching NSE FinViz powered by CNBC TV 18. Today we're in Kolkata at the office of Coal India Limited. Gajendra, then let's talk equities first up to try and to protect ourselves against inflation. When we're looking at equities, again, layman investor might not be sure of what equities are, how to go about the right way. And there's always, I mean, you've either faced it yourself or you've heard it from someone who said that this is the tip, go invest your money, it will double, triple, quadruple, and it becomes like 10% of that. So what's the right way to get into equities?
Very good question. In fact, people think equity is more like a casino or a gambling, आज पैसा डाला और 6 महीने में double. And today the longest duration in equity investing is now becoming 5 minutes, 6 minutes, thanks to derivatives. That is the longest duration. So equities is, people look equities from a, a stock point of view. You are buying a company, right? When you are investing into a company. Now, can you expect, let's say you invested in Tata Motors. Tata Motors is a good company, right? So can you expect every quarter, for Tata Motors to perform by 20%? They may have a bad time. The economy is going through a rough patch. So if Tata Motors is not doing great, your investments in Tata Motors is also not doing great. So you have to give time. Equity is like your baby, and I mean, when we do engineering course, it takes us 4 years to become an engineer, right? We can't become overnight. So everything takes its own course. We have to give time and have patience. And in the long term, you'll be rewarded. All businesses, one fundamental you should always remember, in the long term, equity will always give you more returns than debt. If that was not the case, no company would have put their own money in equity. They would have been happy doing fixed deposits. The very fact that they're earning more than debt is that what they're taking chances and going and creating empires. And the best example is Warren Buffett, who for his life has made money by just investing in smart people, smart companies. He says there are many smart people out there than me, then why should I kind of do homework? I can just put in them and let them make money for me.
So Uday, how should I get into mutual funds? What's an easy way? Because again, let's say young professionals, they might not have that much money at the end of the month. So is systematic investment plan a good option for them?
So I'll first talk about mutual funds. What is a mutual fund? Mutual fund is not only about equity market or share market. In mutual funds, you can do investments which are very similar to, say, fixed deposits. In mutual funds, you can do investments which are very similar to savings bank account, wherein you can put in your money for 3 weeks and take that money out of 3 weeks. So you have all kinds of options. So mutual fund is just a vehicle. It's like a bus that you take from out here. It can go to various stations. You have various products that you can do through mutual funds. So the important bit is you know what you are kind of looking at, whether I am looking at a fixed income kind of a product, whether I am looking at an equity kind of a product. So it gives you all kinds of flavor, all kinds of risk, all kinds of time horizons, short term, long term, very long term, medium term, all kinds of horizon. Now what we call the SIP, which is systematic investment plan, is very similar to what you do call a recurring deposit with a bank. In a recurring deposit, you put money regularly in a bank deposit. In an SIP, you put money regularly in a mutual fund scheme. It does not mean that an SIP only has to happen in equity markets or equity funds. You can actually do an SIP in any kind of fund, the short-term funds, the long-term funds, the medium-range funds, any kind of fund. So basically, mutual fund SIP acts as a very good vehicle for you to start saving. Some time back we were talking about first save and then spend, right? So if you know that this is the date my salary hits my bank account, first, second, third, put some SIPs for yourself so that automatically the money gets debited out of your bank account. You don't have to do any extra work to save that money. Money goes out and gets invested in these funds, and that's how you will sort of start saving and creating a good portfolio for yourself, a good corpus for yourself.
Let's talk a little bit about real estate, because that is also an important class and it's been in the news for the last few years. People are very excited about it. Your advice to new investors, should we get into real estate? Because there is this talk that, for example, I have my first home. Either I'm staying with my parents, so I have my first home. Second home, let me put down the down payment, let me put it on rent and offset that rent against the EMI. Is that a good way to go?
I don't agree with this logic. In fact, this is a very flawed logic. Many people go, even for the first house, they take a loan. Now, I have no personal thing against that. But, it's looked like if you don't have a house, you're not considered kind of a part of the society that way, because you think that you still don't own a house. But what I believe is that many people, and particularly for the second investment, it's not a good idea at all that if you think that I can take a house on EMI and I can offset it with a rent, because the EMI cost is, the rental yield is around 2% and the EMI cost is 10-12%. So every year you're down by 10% and you're only hoping that it will appreciate in the long term and it will give you, which may or may not be the case. Okay? And second is that real estate is again a derivative of economy. If people think that real estate will always go up, it's a myth. First, equities will have to go up and then only can real estate go up. And I'll give you a classic example. We all into jobs, right? And we all want to aspire, we all want to buy a house. How can you buy a house if next month your salary doesn't come? Which means first your job has to be there. And how long your job will be there? As long as the company is there, right? So first the company has to grow, then you will grow, and then you can buy real estate. So it's again all interlinked. So it's not a safe investment, it's a product of the economy, it's a derivative of the economy.
Well, then another favorite asset class, especially with the ladies, is gold. What's your take on gold? How important is it? And in India, of course, everybody, we have this culture that Indians have a lot of gold, but it's usually in the form of jewelry, and so it's not, it's kind of tied up somewhere. So what's your take on gold, the importance of gold?
See, like you rightly said, both gold and property, they are kind of personal assets, and we are very, very sort of emotional about both of them. So we are not talking about the assets that you have, which are your personal assets. We are talking purely on gold as an investment. Why would you buy gold as an investment? Gold does not give dividends. Gold does not give any kind of interest. The only way you can make money in gold is the price that you bought gold at, that price has to go up. So if you bought gold at 20,000 rupees, then it has to go to 30,000 rupees. That's the only way you're going to make money. People have various theories. One theory is that gold basically protects your money against inflation. At times it works, at times it does not work. In the last 1 year, gold has actually gone down, right? So a lot of people said gold is the safest asset class. Not necessarily so. I think fixed deposits are a much safer investment than gold. So again, this is our belief, is that gold works well when there is, it's like a form of insurance. When do you need insurance? When there is catastrophe. Right? When you don't know what is happening, that's when gold will do well. So I believe that gold is like an insurance that you can buy for your portfolio, and pray and hope that this insurance does not come to play at any point in time.
You're watching NSE FinViz powered by CNBC TV 18. It's time for a very short break, but after this, the audience puts forth their questions to our experts. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching NSE FinViz powered by CNBC TV 18. It's now time to go over to the audience as they put forth their questions to our experts.
Sir, in the very beginning, you stressed upon the fact to have a proper goal for your investment. Given the turbulent market conditions and uncertain global economy and of course internal factors like inflation, how does one calculate even remotely how much fund I will be requiring by the time maybe I retire, somewhere around 2050 say? How do I calculate that even remotely and plan accordingly? Thank you.
Any planning process that begins can never be perfect. I'm saying there are economists sitting in World Bank, IMF and so on and so forth. They do so many projections. They say there are in statistics, there are lies, there are damn lies, and there is statistics. And I recently read there are forecasters also added to that group. So it's very difficult to forecast. But you know what happens is when you start that planning process, you kind of know how much in water you are. It will not be correct. It will require you to relook at things. But to just answer your question is that, let's say only for retirement, I think it's difficult. It's very difficult for anyone to forecast, but we can take some assumptions. We can say, okay, the inflation will be likely to be this and so on and so forth and so on. But take a 20-year projection, 30-year projection, I'm certain that none of us will get it right.
I have taken LIC term insurance, which is nearly yearly 15,000 rupees per year, and it's my risk cover is around 50 lakhs. But there are several private insurance companies like Aviva. They are offering 9,000 or 10,000 rupees, and they are giving a claim for 1 crore or 2 crore like this. So my question is, why there is a difference, and should I go for this private insurance or not?
Okay, very good one, very good question. So a term insurance is a term insurance, no matter from where you buy. Okay, it's the same. Now, every company has their own process to identify at what rate they will sell this insurance. Okay, and there's no standard process. Now, most of these private insurers are offering at a very cheap rate. Now, there is some logic to that. A, that is bypassing the agent or commission. So you are directly involved with the company, you're buying online, so there's nobody to help in the process. So that's why the commission which they would have, given it to the agents is now saved. So that saving is done by you. Second thing, you should realize why they are doing online. They are doing this for smart people, for online tech savvy people, so that they know what is the term insurance and they can buy on their own, right? And these are today's generation people. You are working in an AC office in Coal India Limited. So you are at very young age, at 21 you are buying, right? So the premium is very low because you are healthy, and you are an educated, conscious person. This cannot be the same about, let's say, a village in Patna, in Bihar. There, the medical facility is not there. So the cost of, the average lifespan is much lower there.
On that note, thank you Gajendra, thank you Uday for that, and thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of NSE FinViz, powered by CNBC TV 18, and it also wraps up the series where we've traveled across the country and shot with the young employees at 20 different companies. And we hope we've been able to guide them so that they can secure a financially stable future for themselves. From the entire team, many thanks for watching.